Well, tomorrow, President Obama will speak at the memorial service for the 5 Dallas officers killed last week. Vice President Joe Biden and George W. Bush will also be there. The president's visit to Spain was cut short in order for him to return home. Press Secretary Josh Earnest says that this week the president will concentrate on, quote, addressing the persistent racial disparities in our criminal justice system. And while the president emphasized the protesters around the country yesterday, empathized rather with the protesters around the country yesterday, he expressed that civility will be the only way to garner actual change.
My hope would be that everybody who's involved in the Black Lives Matters movement or other civil rights organizations or who are protesting, just as I want all of them to maintain a respectful, thoughtful tone, because as a practical matter, that's what's going to get change done.
Our Chip Reid is at the White House on the North Lawn there. Chip, Press Secretary Josh Earnest said the president will be spending his time focusing on the persistent racial disparities in our criminal justice system. What exactly does that mean? What sort of plans does the president have?
Well, I think that's going to be one thing he'll talk about. To tell you the truth, I think he's going to downplay that. He has made that point many times in the past that he does believe that statistics show there are persistent racial disparities in law enforcement. For example, that black people are pulled over in their cars much more often than white people. But certainly what he's going to be emphasizing in Dallas is people talking to each other, people healing, police listening to protesters, protesters listening to police, and I think he's going to be doing a lot of praising of the police. He said a number of times in Europe since this happened, before he came back to Washington, since the Dallas shooting, that the overwhelming majority of police officers do an excellent job, an outstanding job, as he said at one point. Here's one quote from the things he said in Europe. He said, as a nation, let's remember to express our profound gratitude to our men and women in blue, not just today, but every day. So I think there's going to be a big emphasis on that message, especially given the fact that he's going to be meeting with families of the police victims.
Yeah, you mentioned that the president has talked about racial disparities before, particularly in the criminal justice system. Prior to the shooting in Dallas, he made a speech where he rattled off a series of statistics to reinforce that notion. And, you know, a lot of people are uncomfortable when he does stuff like that. There's a fine line here. He obviously needs to praise the police, like what you said, but also identify some of the problems in the system. It's quite a balancing act.
It really is. It's like walking a tightrope, because he knows that when he says there are persistent racial disparities, some people are going to say you're attacking the police. How can you attack the police, especially after a horrific incident like this? But he believes the protesters have a point, the police have a point, and what they need to do is listen to each other. And if they don't, then we're not going to make any progress at all.
And so, yet again, he is addressing another mass shooting in this country. Any indication as to whether or not he'll be making any legislative progress on gun control? He always sort of seems to fold in something about gun control when he holds these speeches.
Well, I tell you what, he probably will mention gun control again. He pretty much always does. He does believe it's a really important part of this equation. He said recently that if people really care about the safety of their police officers, then they can't treat gun control like it's an irrelevant issue. But the chances of getting something through this Republican Congress during an election year are almost nil.
Yeah, Chip Reid at the White House. Thank you so much, Chip.
You bet.